In the case of VR, packing titles may be more important than what used to be packed with a game console. VR is going to take a lot of convincing to get people interested in it due to the large monetary entry fee and limited launch titles. From a marketing standpoint, it's practically a new game console akin to more of the 3DO, which was also very expensive. I know I'm late to the VR launch party, but let's rip into the 3 packing titles for the Vive. For starters, we have Job Simulator, the 2050 Archives, a really fun demonstration of the technology while being an entertainment game with some decent staying power. It's the year 2050 and robots have basically taken over, but some people may want to experience the horrors of customer interaction-based jobs without the anxiety or stress. Job Simulator has a great sense of humor with plenty of exploration elements despite being limited to a very small cubicle of space. It's like a sandbox type of game, but instead of building castles, you're digging for Easter eggs and other little treasures. You have the option of being a store clerk, an office worker, an auto mechanic, or a gourmet chef. Office worker is actually the most minimal in customer interaction, that there barely is any. Office worker is probably my favorite, and it has a lot of interactivity. You can throw stuff over your cubicle to mess with people. The boss bot will come by and you can actually mess with him, and he'll even acknowledge you when you mess with him. One point in time, he came up to me and said, like, "Hey, human, you're doing a pretty good job. Like, if you don't screw it within the next 15 seconds, I might give you a promotion." I take his glasses off his face, and then he's like, "You know what? I like your attitude. You got the promotion." Things like that are just so cool. There's an interesting design philosophy for some of the levels. For example, in Store Clerk, there's less to do around you, but the interactions with the customers are kind of the cooler parts. In Office Worker, it's more about the environment that you're interacting with rather than the actual tasks they give you. Although, the tasks that they give you, and this is how you progress the game, do vary it up and they do add new little things here and there mechanically. But it really depends on the environment. Some are better than others, and some have better jobs for you to do, little quests, than others. It's a really interesting way of keeping you engaged with all of the various levels that you can do. One of my concerns is what the developer said in response to adding DLC. They're aware of it, they want to do it, but it took them a very long time to make this game, several years in fact, which is kind of scary considering how fast you can beat this game. Now I know a lot of games, they take a lot of time, some of them can be beaten very quickly, but for VR it seems like a very huge hurdle, and I understand that Alchemy is a very small company, but when you consider that it took them this long to make the game, they might not be able to add more quality content in the future because it's just too much to do. Have you ever heard of something like that, where an independent developer is like, "Hey, I can't do this because it's going to cost way too much money"? It happens sometimes, but for something like Job Simulator, which is the forefront, it's the pack-in for the HTC Vive, and they can't do more content because of the time and the money it's going to cost, that's a really scary precedent. But hopefully they'll be able to do some more stuff with it. I really am interested to see what Alchemy is going to do in the future for VR. Tilt Brush, developed by Google, is an interesting experiment with the technology. I'd hardly call it a game. It's a sandbox, much like Job Simulator, but more of a blank slate creation platform rather than a fleshed-out VR video game. That's not to say it's lazy. It has a lot of tools that you can use to paint, draw, craft, do whatever. It's just not my thing. I'm not the most creative person. I can see artists, on the other hand, pushing their work through this entirely new medium of how they present to other people. Physical art exhibits might be the thing of the past. Just have someone strap on a headset and walk through your virtual gallery that is shared online with other people to show off your work. Maybe not show the stuff you made in Tilt Brush, but you get the idea. There's not much of that here, unfortunately, but I can see the potential. I'd really be interested in checking out how this new medium works out for artists 5 years or so down the line. But for now, Tilt Brush is a very rudimentary program with only a handful of things you can do. And finally, we come to Fantastic Contraption, and in some ways, it's more disappointing than Tilt Brush. So much could have been done here, and it's all wasted. I used to play another game series called The Incredible Machine Contraptions on an older Macintosh, and Contraption Maker, the spiritual successor, just came out of early access. I covered it eons ago when my channel was starting out. That game has more interesting things going on for it than this one. There's a very limited amount of stuff to tinker around with here, and as a result, the potential Rube Goldberg machine that this game could have achieved, these scenarios that could have happened, are now non-existent. And what's the point, then, of these contraptions when you can't do cool stuff with them? You kind of just test them out. It's like you're building really simplistic cars and then just letting them go off and fall off somewhere. It's not good. It's kind of terrible, to be honest. And this game costs $40 on Steam if you're not getting it for free when you buy a brand new HTC Vive from Valve. You might say that's the point, to make your own little machines, your own environments, but with very limited tool selection, you're gonna run into problems whereby you can't do much. You can make some cool things, but how far is that really going to keep you going in a game that costs $40? Still doesn't mean you can't be creative. You can manipulate the objects to do different things, but again, very limited amounts of items in order to customize this experience, and that's my biggest problem, the lack of items. There is all this other stuff too, like online workshops where you can share your creations and your levels with other people, but with the lack of tools, it's very hard to come into this. They seem to have a groundwork for something great here, but they don't execute it very well. So that pretty much wraps it up for all the pack-in titles for the Vive, and I'm impressed, but I'm a little disappointed in the value proposition. Job Simulator is really the only game I'd recommend buying if you don't get these games for free, and yeah, it's a little bit annoying because what they really should have done was at least include one more title or taken out either Tilt Brush or Contraption for a shooter title, because I think that's where VR really shines, and we're going to be looking at some of those titles in the future, so stay tuned. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. I'm out.